What's up, everybody? It's I'm So Cutie, and today we're going to be talking about set champ deck list, what you could bring, why would you bring it, and what field you're expecting, and the complexity levels of some decks, the lists, and all that good stuff. So I really want people to have better outcomes in their local scene. I remember when I first started in my local scene, and I did really poorly, and I never understood why, and never understood what deck to play, and sometimes sticking to cookie cutter lists and just kind of knowing the meta is all you really need to do at these local events. It's a lot different than when you go to places like PPG, DLC, Glass City, and all these other events, just because of the player pool being so big. There's just a lot more variables that you kind of have to go and adhere to when you're making lists. But yeah, let's get right into it. So I think we're actually in a pretty healthy format. It's kind of like how I explained it as rock, paper, scissors. There's aggro, control, and mid-range, and all decks kind of have a viable build currently, and they all have top-cutted huge events and continuously win bigger events, like 50, 100-player events over the weekends. So they've been super good, and just depending on what your playstyle is, and if your meta is pretty diverse, you just kind of have to go with your playstyle. Because if you don't go with your playstyle, you'll just be in really awkward situations where you're just not playing the deck you want to be playing, right? And you're just not going to have a fun time, and you'll want to leave, and you won't get the card. And I don't want that for anybody. Obviously, there's only 8. For locals, usually it looks like 12 or 16. But hopefully this helps you out in picking the right deck. So what's your locals dominated by? Is it dominated by Blurple? Blurple will probably be the deck that dominates my locals. Is it Amber Steel? Is it Chromicon? Is it the Packer Dogs? Is it Purple Steel? Is it Calhoun? Is it Challengers? Is it Red Steel? Is it off-meta things? And it's just really important to realize that. This is probably my complexity rankings for the decks in general. Mid-range is just a really big toolboxy deck that I always struggle to play. You're just competing at a bunch of different slots. You're playing like 4 or 5 unique cards in the same slot that basically change. They're like ever changing based on the matchup, and it's just a really cool that people play decks like that. And I think it is probably the highest skill ceiling deck that exists. So yeah, I also put aggro at second, just because aggro, you can't really just play a bunch of merfolks and turn sideways. Because once you get answered, and once people have answers to things, you really do need to think about the cards that you're putting on the board, the cards that you're keeping in your hand, and the cards that are answering their cards in their hand, especially with a lot of the decks that are performing really well, and some of the off-meta stuff that runs Chromicon, Ursula, and Pete. It's just really important to have good economy and good resource management. And so aggro is a lot less forgiving than control. For example, control, once you figure out what the correct curve is, you kind of just dominate the game, right? And if you find the correct curve, and if you find you're out, you're basically just winning. And control decks typically have a lot of components that help you correct your curves and correct the things that you're doing in the game, and they're very forgiving, because just randomly you can draw into the board wipe that you didn't even plan to have at all, but because you filtered so much and inked so much that you're just now in a position to just play it. So that's my complexity ranking, and depending on how complex of a player you believe you are, definitely picking a deck that is kind of more at your skill set is definitely going to be really important. So again, aggro gets under blue, so if there's a lot of blue in your meta, aggro is definitely the way to go. It is super favorable into green, blue, and blurple. They are controlled decks, and it is unfavorable into mid-range and technically other aggro decks, just because of stat line issues and clearing issues. You are very favorable into the control decks, just because it takes a little bit longer for their engines to come alive. Obviously, they do and can beat you if you're not managing your resources correctly. Again, that is why there is a skill ceiling. But again, aggro, if you're looking for a way to play, this would be the reason why you play aggro. And these are a couple of the lists. So Amber Steel aggro is one of the most popular decks. It is the top 4 deck. Fire the Cannons got introduced recently at PBG when playing into the mirror, and it is an amazing curve breaker, especially to Tipo and Clarabelle, so they cannot shift under the C. This basically just guts them of all their outs. You also have Pete on the top end. This could probably drop down to 3, but again, it is a super cookie cutter list where you just play. You always go Aurora Tiana no matter what, and you just establish. You have a good sense of Mulan and Doc, and you just kind of run away with the game on the play and on the draw. It is fast, it is tanky, and it quests for 2 all the way through. It's been super good. I've tested it, and I actually played it at the Chicagoland. Again, it's just not my playstyle, so I performed really poorly. I thought I was just playing with a bunch of bulk cards. It is super difficult to kind of change your mindset and change the way you manage resources if you only play control, or if you only play mid-range, or if you only play aggro. So again, depending on what decks you've seen success with, if it's very similar to this, where you're just sprinkling a little bit of clear, sprinkling a little bit of control, but mainly turning on the jets, this is a perfect deck for you. And again, if it's just a lot of blurple, you just go Tiana and just run them down. If you high roll into Tiana and then you just do good with like daisies and arrows and Nalas, it's really over. There's not a lot they can do. If you do double Tiana, the game is 100% over. But yeah, it's been a super good deck, and let's go right into number 2. Another aggro list that I really enjoy, and that it has been doing really good. There is a lot of archetypes for this deck, and it is honestly a much higher skill ceiling than most mid-range decks. It's a proven contender. I mean, it's been winning a lot of events this last weekend, 60, 50 player events. There's a lot of skill expression, so if you feel like you are more of an aggro player, but you kind of want to turn it up a notch, this is definitely the way to go. You'll pull off some fancy tricks. It is a super demanding deck on the play, and on the draw it is actually pretty responsive, especially using things that kind of turn the tides back to you, like Under the Sea, Clarabelle, Chromacon, Lady, the one that plays another one for free. It's just super good. I've seen it destroy mid-range decks. I've seen it 2-0 mid-range, so there's definitely just things to be explored. Definitely a higher skill ceiling. I do believe that Amber Steel would be better, but it is a much cheaper alternative if you do not have Dumbos and things like that. You don't even need to play the big Clarabelle. I just put her in because I recently saw a list. You don't even need to play some of these, like, more expensive cards, like $10, $15 cards. But this is just another super good deck, and these would be the 2 aggro decks that I by far recommend people to just copy, paste, plug and play, try to figure it out. Once you figure out the curve and figure out a little bit more of the responses, I mean, you're golden. If you're like a novice player, I would definitely say Amber Steel for sure. But if you're a little bit more experienced and a little bit better with like the interactions and card triggers and things like that, I would definitely practice this. Mid-range now. So there are actually multiple archetypes, and the only mid-range deck that I'll actually go into for this set is going to be Purple Steel. There were a couple of different ones, but honestly, Purple Steel is just the way to go if you're going to play any mid-range deck. Other mid-range decks just kind of fall off. They kind of want to do what Purple Steel does, but Purple Steel just does it better. It's super favorable into aggro, and it's technically unfavorable into control, but I do actually believe that it's ultimately like a big toss-up with like every single matchup, which is actually a really good place to be, especially in conversion ratios. Conversion ratios show that Purple Steel is pretty much at 50% everywhere, which is actually a super impressive thing and a super balanced thing, especially with play draw disparities. So I honestly would prefer to play this deck. Again, you can play burn, you can play aggro, you can play evasives, you can play challenges. It actually kind of just forms itself over the player. So depending on your playstyle, definitely don't just take this copy and paste at first, but feel it out. And honestly, like, there's just so many cards. There's probably like 16, 20 cards that you can just switch out completely, and the deck would operate almost technically like the exact same core, right, but operate completely different. Having a heavier emphasis on evasives, having a heavier emphasis on just drawing and having tanky bodies, heavier emphasis on challenging. I've seen people play the Jafar Challenger, which is in Thiago's list. People play full-on Guardian, full Vanish to draw a bunch. People don't play it. People play the Yzma to draw more and just kind of mill out their hand. There is a lot of good things that Purple Steel introduces, and it's honestly a super forgiving deck when you want to tech out. And you just kind of want to put in it. You could even play one-ofs and the deck is still like super consistent. It's actually super odd how well it does. I do actually think that this is the biggest contender of best deck in format still, and I think it is a very close second. But again, if you're looking for something where like your whole locals are just playing aggro, or maybe other mid-range decks, Purple Steel is definitely just the way to go. It's just super good. It's super forgiving. You're playing some of the best cards in the game at the moment, and it can win again every matchup. If you have like maybe one or two control players, but a lot of them are just aggro, all the other ones are just aggro. I mean, you get away with just winning with this. It's been super good, and I would definitely look into like JDRR and Thiago. I'm not that good at purple steel, so I don't really know if this list is like crazy. I've done pretty good on this list, but it's just not really my deck. I usually just kind of like playing control, especially like Ruby Saf and Amber Steel Song. Those are super fun. So again, now going into control, which is my favorite, and I'd probably just say that it's like the least skill expressive, just because of like how much I've played it. I kind of just understand where things are supposed to go, and like when I basically lose the game. It's just kind of how it is. It's super unfavorable into aggro. There's just a lot of things that have to like line up correctly for you to win that matchup, which is still actually pretty good, because if you high roll your hand a little bit, you could actually get out of that situation of like a super hard aggro deck, which is good, because then in any long matchup you're super favorable. It's just about setting things up correctly. You do actually destroy mid-range pretty hard. If they're requiring things to be alive to like set up engines around like 4-5, you are just so infinitely ahead because of your blue. Usually control will have blue. It's just super good. You're just playing so many things for free and faster, and that's why Steel Song was a control deck, and Diablo and things like that, because they were shifting for free and playing higher cost cards sooner, faster. So that's why they were control decks. So again, if you've played like really well into like Diablo Discard or Steel Song or Ruby Sapphire or Blurple back in the day, pre-rotation, these are definitely the decks to play, especially if your entire meta is purple steel, blue steel, or any sort of like steel variants besides Amber Steel. I would definitely throw up some control lists for sure. So number one is actually Blue Steel. Blue Steel is actually pretty good. It's a proven contender, and it does really well in Blind Swiss. Skill expression is definitely there for this one. It's not like cookie cutter curves, so I would definitely say you have to be a little bit more experienced to be playing a deck like this. There's a lot more like micro decisions to be made, but it is super fun. You do beat Pete just because a lot of your like play effects and clearing and stuff is all like on play, so you don't really fall into the issue of like getting locked out of being able to like answer the board, which is actually really good. I really enjoy that. You have really good answers to evasives, really good answers to things that are just standing, not to ward obviously, but you're also playing a ward engine yourself. I really do like this list, and Forbidden Mountain had posted this. It actually did really good at a 180 player event, so if you are a more experienced technical player, this would definitely be there. The other two decks are pretty like cookie cutter curve. You play curve, you adapt it just a little bit, but you basically just win the game. So let's get right into those ones. You are playing green blue. This has actually been like one of my favorite lists. It is super high roll though, in the fact that you need Baymax Enter to the Sea. Otherwise you get destroyed by aggro, which I absolutely hate. But, I mean, in the top end, once you clear their board, the game is basically over. You're using Reckless. You could tech in the Peter Pan. You're removing everything that they play. You're locking them out at like 12, 13. They're never questing or having another character on the board again. It's actually super tilting to play against, but it is super good. Again, I say it's just super easy because you play the curve correctly, and if you hit the Clarabelle, you basically win, right? If you hit the Clarabelle and the Under the Sea. And again, in blue decks and control decks, it's just very forgiving because you're playing things like Sail, Develop, Visions, and Clarabelle to net you a card. There's just a lot of cards that net you a new card, and they're part of your curve, and it just corrects the bad 7, right? If you drew a bad 7, you can have it corrected really easily, and it's a super tight list, so the likelihood that you find the Clarabelle if you're digging for it is pretty high. So I really do enjoy it. Again, if you are looking at a lot of mid-range decks or just other control decks, Clara Control is an absolute go-to. I would play it similar to this, but again, looking at people like Zan and Jeremy who have played this deck and made it popular over the weekend of CCS, you could always just cookie cutter those lists. But again, it's just self-explanatory, right? You draw the 7, you look for your curve, you hit the curve, you win the game. And then, you know, in other control decks, it's just little micro decisions. But honestly, putting this deck down and playing it, you learn it as you go, and there's so many small decisions that you'll instantly learn once you make the wrong or right choice, right? You'll be like, oh, that was right, so I'm going to do that from now on. You know, it's just things like that that are really easy to teach, and I just believe control is a lot easier to teach once you have so much ink and so much forgiveness built into the deck. And finally, for the control players, I do say that Blurple is probably the best deck in format. If you were on the play and hit no 1-drop, and then hit Tipo or Sail into Genie Elsa into any mid-range or control deck, you are 100% winning the game. Like, there is like no reason why you should lose the game. That is probably one of the most broken curves at the moment into any mid-range or other control deck. In terms of on the draw, if you play something that they cannot banish, you now hit something, or just play Genie Elsa again, or just play Genie Bell. The deck is super forgiving. You are playing so many cards that say draw a card. It's just been super good. I mean, I've played it at CCS. It's such a strong deck. I assume that DLC Milwaukee will be all this deck. Honestly, I'll probably play this deck, but I don't know yet. I'll probably play green blue. Again, it's proven to be the best deck in format. It has the most top cuts. The conversion ratio isn't that good just because of how many people are playing it, but in top cuts, it is the majority almost every single time. The curve is literally unstoppable. Again, if you find it, you win it. There's very small micro decisions to make, and so it is definitely the best deck in format, especially if your locals are just mid-range and other control decks. Those are like the highlighted decks that I would 100% guarantee that you'll probably top 8 at your locals, especially if you made the right meta call. Obviously, if you play something like Amber Steel aggro and the entire field is other Amber Steel aggros and they're just more experienced or way crazy teched out for mirrors, you're going to be pretty unfavorable. But again, it's just knowing that meta, especially in things like locals and set champs. If you're traveling, just bring one of these decks that you just love playing. Think of something that is like your style. Think of something that you believe is popular out there, and just play smart and watch some videos. I love watching videos and game VODs. Obviously, I wish I could post. I always say that. I wish I could post a little bit more of my own gameplay. But again, I hope this really broke down some of the better lists and concepts and deck types that exist out there. So for people that are more casual, people that want to be more competitive, people that want to get their first card, and people that want to get their first mat, I hope this helps. I hope that you realize that you play into a certain style. I hope that you realize that this is why people play this deck, and this is why this deck is good, and how could I make it just a little bit better. Throw in a little bit of your own spice, but keep it pretty core. And I hope that the information that I broke down and shared helps somebody. Hopefully I can get those Dreamborn links into the YouTube, and good luck at set champs. Get yourself a Maleficent Dragon.